Your soulmate secretly met someone close to you. Here's what they talked about. Something happened behind the scenes that you were never meant to hear about this soon, and yet somehow, this message is finding you at the exact moment your intuition has already started asking questions. There is a conversation happening around your name, a conversation filled with emotion, hesitation, curiosity, and something your soulmate has been trying very hard to hide. Listen to this, because the reason your soulmate secretly met someone close to you may be completely different from what you are imagining, and by the time you understand what was really said, you may look back at their silence in an entirely different way. There is a strange energy surrounding this connection right now, almost as if something that has been hidden is slowly being brought into the light. You may have felt it recently. That sudden feeling that something is changing. That unexpected memory of your soulmate appearing in your mind when you were doing something completely unrelated. That moment when you checked your phone for no reason. That dream that felt unusually real. That song that suddenly reminded you of them. Those little moments can feel random, but when your heart is already carrying unfinished emotions, they can become powerful reminders of what still matters to you. And this message is about what may have been happening on their side while you were wondering why they remained silent. Your soulmate has been thinking about you more than they have admitted. They have been replaying moments, conversations, mistakes, and memories that they thought they had already moved past. But something recently brought those feelings back to the surface, and instead of coming directly to you, they chose a different path. They reached out to someone close to you. Maybe it was a mutual friend. Maybe it was someone who knows your personality well. Maybe it was a person they have crossed paths with before and trusted enough to ask questions. Whoever this person was, your soulmate believed they could provide one thing they couldn't get from you directly: information without immediate rejection. Don't scroll, because this is where the story becomes deeper. Your soulmate wasn't simply asking, "How are they doing?" There was another question underneath that question. They wanted to know whether you still care. They wanted to know whether you have moved on. They wanted to know whether someone else has entered your life. They wanted to know whether their name still means something to you. And most importantly, they wanted to know whether there is still a possibility that you would listen if they finally decided to come forward. They may have tried to make the conversation sound casual. They may have laughed it off. They may have pretended they were only curious. But the person they were speaking with could probably feel that something much deeper was happening. Because when someone truly doesn't care, they don't usually need answers about another person's emotional life. Your soulmate needed answers. And that alone tells you something important. They have been carrying uncertainty. They have been wondering about you in silence. They have been imagining different scenarios in their mind, and some of those scenarios have frightened them. One of their biggest fears may be that while they were waiting, you were healing. While they were confused, you were becoming stronger. While they were silent, you were learning how to live without them. And now they may be realizing that the version of you they once knew is not the same version standing here today. Your energy has changed. You may have stopped chasing. You may have stopped trying to force answers. You may have started choosing your peace over emotional confusion. And somehow, even from a distance, that shift may have reached them. Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. The conversation with someone close to you may have started with something small, but it quickly became more personal. Your soulmate may have asked whether you ever talk about them anymore. They may have asked if you are happy. They may have asked whether you are dating someone. They may have asked whether you still hold resentment. They may have asked whether you would ever consider talking to them again. And perhaps they didn't realize how obvious their feelings were until the person they were speaking to looked at them and understood exactly what was happening. Because sometimes people reveal their emotions through the questions they ask. They say, "I'm just curious," but then ask 5 more questions. They say, "It doesn't matter," but become quiet when the answer isn't what they hoped for. They say they have moved on, but their voice changes when your name is mentioned. That may have happened here. Your soulmate may have been trying to protect their pride, but their heart kept exposing them. And then came the question they were most afraid to ask: do you think they still care about me? Think about that for a moment. Someone who has truly closed the door doesn't usually need reassurance that the other person is still standing outside it. But your soulmate may still be wondering. They may still be hoping. They may still be afraid that they waited too long. And this is where the spiritual energy surrounding this connection becomes especially intense. You may have been seeing repeating numbers lately. Maybe 111, 222, 333, 444, 555, or 1111. Maybe you keep noticing the same number whenever you think about your soulmate. Maybe you see their initials unexpectedly. Maybe certain songs seem to appear at exactly the right moment. Maybe you have dreams where you speak to them, forgive each other, reconnect, or finally say the things you never got to say. These signs don't have to be treated as literal predictions, but they can feel deeply meaningful when they appear during an emotional season. And in the energy of this message, they symbolize awakening, reflection, change, and the possibility of a new chapter. Your soulmate may be experiencing their own version of that awakening. Something has been forcing them to look honestly at their past. They are beginning to understand that the silence between you didn't erase what they felt. It only gave them more time to think about it. They may have tried distractions. They may have focused on work, responsibilities, friends, or even other relationships. But whenever the noise became quiet, the thoughts of you returned. And that is why they may have needed to talk to someone close to you. They needed somewhere safe to put emotions they were not yet brave enough to place directly in front of you. Don't scroll, because there is something else you need to understand. Your soulmate may not have gone into this conversation expecting to reveal everything. They may have thought they could ask 1 or 2 questions and leave. But something about the conversation opened the door. Perhaps the person close to you asked them why they were suddenly so interested in your life. Perhaps they challenged them and said, "If you still care this much, why don't you just talk to them?" And that question may have hit a place inside your soulmate they had been avoiding. Because it is easier to ask about you than to speak to you. It is easier to wonder whether you still care than to risk discovering that you don't. It is easier to imagine reconciliation than to actually apologize. It is easier to say, "I miss them," to someone else than to look into your eyes and admit it. But something may have shifted during that conversation. Your soulmate may have realized that they cannot keep hiding behind indirect questions forever. If they truly want another chance, they will eventually have to become honest. They will have to acknowledge what happened. They will have to explain why they disappeared, why they stayed silent, why they allowed distance to grow, and why they are still thinking about you now. And that realization can be both terrifying and liberating. Your soulmate may have also learned something about you that they weren't expecting. Perhaps the person close to you told them that you've changed. That you have become more independent. That you are protecting your peace. That you are no longer waiting around for someone to decide your worth. Maybe they were told that you still have feelings, but you won't accept confusion anymore. Maybe they were told that if your soulmate ever comes back, they need to come back with honesty, consistency, and real intentions. And that information could have completely changed their mindset. Because your soulmate may have imagined that they could simply appear again and everything would return to the way it was. But now they're realizing that time changed both of you. You grew. They changed. The circumstances changed. And if something is going to happen again, it has to be different this time. Listen closely, because this is the part that may explain why their energy feels different lately. Your soulmate may have walked away from that conversation carrying a mixture of hope and fear. Hope because they may have discovered that the door isn't completely closed. Fear because now they know they can't hide forever. They may have spent the night thinking about everything that was said. They may have replayed the conversation over and over. They may have wondered whether they should send a message. They may have opened your contact, stared at your name, typed something, deleted it, and then told themselves, maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow keeps becoming another tomorrow until eventually the heart becomes tired of waiting. And that is where the emotional pressure is building. Something is pushing them toward a decision. They can either continue protecting themselves through silence, or they can finally risk vulnerability. And your soulmate is beginning to understand that silence isn't protecting them anymore. It is only keeping them away from something they still deeply care about. There may have been one specific thing said during that secret meeting that affected them more than everything else. Something about you. Something about how you have been doing. Something about whether you still remember them. Something that made them realize they may not have as much time as they thought. And that one detail is going to matter because it may become the reason they finally decide to reach out. Your soulmate may have walked into that conversation looking for information, but they may have walked away with a decision forming in their heart. They may now be asking themselves a question they can no longer avoid: what if I lose them for good because I was too afraid to speak? And once that question takes root, everything changes. Because sometimes the biggest turning point in a connection isn't a dramatic reunion. Sometimes it is the moment someone finally becomes honest with themselves. Your soulmate may have reached that moment. They may still be nervous. They may still hesitate. They may still have fears about how you will respond. But something has awakened inside them, and that awakening is making the old silence harder to maintain. Stay with me, because the conversation didn't end when they walked away. In fact, that may have been when the real story began. The words exchanged between your soulmate and this person close to you may have planted a thought that is now growing stronger every hour. If they truly want to know how you feel, they cannot keep asking everyone else. Eventually, they have to ask you. And when they finally do, the answer may bring a truth neither of you has been prepared to face. And now that conversation is sitting in your soulmate's mind in a way they cannot easily shake, because something was revealed to them that they were not emotionally prepared to hear. Listen to this, because the next part of this story goes much deeper than simply finding out whether you still care. The person close to you may have said something that made your soulmate realize just how much time has passed, how much you have changed, and how uncertain their place in your life has become. They may have expected to hear that you were still waiting, still thinking about them every day, still emotionally stuck in the same place where they left you, but instead they may have discovered something completely different. They may have heard that you've been growing, healing, becoming stronger, and learning to live without needing anyone to validate your worth. And that information may have shaken them because deep down, they were relying on the idea that you would always be there. They thought they could take their time. They thought they could figure themselves out first and return whenever they were ready. But now they're realizing that life doesn't wait for anyone. You don't wait forever. And that realization is creating a completely different kind of urgency inside them. Don't scroll, because this is where the emotional shift begins. Your soulmate may have walked away from that meeting asking themselves whether they have already missed their chance. They may have wondered if someone else has entered your life. They may have imagined you giving another person the love, patience, understanding, and loyalty that they once received from you. And even if they have no right to feel jealous, the thought may still have affected them deeply. They may have imagined someone else hearing your stories, seeing your smile, sharing your quiet moments, and being there for you in the ways they weren't. And suddenly, the possibility of losing you became real instead of theoretical. Before this conversation, they could tell themselves that you would always be somewhere in the background. After this conversation, they may have realized that you are moving forward whether they are ready or not. That can create a powerful emotional awakening. Sometimes people don't recognize the value of something while they feel secure in having access to it. It is only when distance becomes real that they understand what they could lose. And your soulmate may now be experiencing exactly that realization. Listen closely, because there may also have been something about your current energy that the person close to you described. Maybe they said you're different now. Maybe they said you don't talk about the past the way you used to. Maybe they said you're focused on yourself. Maybe they said you seem peaceful. Maybe they said you have stopped asking questions about your soulmate. And if your soulmate heard that, it may have created a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief because perhaps they learned that you aren't angry anymore. Fear because perhaps you aren't waiting anymore either. And that distinction matters. Your soulmate may have wanted to believe that silence meant the connection was still paused, waiting for them to return. But they may now be realizing that silence can also mean closure, growth, and acceptance. That thought could be pushing them toward action. Don't scroll, because the reason this matters is that your soulmate may finally be understanding something they couldn't understand before. You cannot rebuild a connection by simply missing someone. You have to show up. You have to communicate. You have to take responsibility. You have to be willing to hear the other person's truth, even when it makes you uncomfortable. And this is where their internal battle begins. They may want to reach out, but fear immediately rises. What if you don't respond? What if you do respond but you're cold? What if you ask questions they don't know how to answer? What if you bring up the past? What if you tell them that they hurt you? What if you've already moved on emotionally? These thoughts may have been running through their mind after that secret meeting. They may have opened their phone several times. They may have looked at old messages. They may have scrolled through memories they thought they had deleted. They may have revisited pictures, listened to songs, or remembered little details they hadn't consciously thought about in months. And suddenly, those memories didn't feel like the past. They felt like unfinished conversations. That's why their energy may feel intense right now. They are not simply remembering you. They are reconsidering the story. They are asking themselves whether the ending was really an ending or simply a chapter that stopped because neither of you knew what to do next. And this is where the spiritual side of the message becomes even stronger. You may notice more synchronicities around you. You may see repeating numbers like 111 when thinking about new beginnings, 222 when questioning whether balance can be restored, 333 when you feel pushed to express your truth, 444 when you need reassurance, or 555 when you're experiencing major emotional change. Again, these signs don't guarantee what another person will do, but they can serve as meaningful reminders to stay aware of your own intuition and emotional boundaries. And perhaps your soulmate is experiencing similar reminders. Maybe they keep seeing your initials. Maybe they keep hearing a song connected to you. Maybe someone unexpectedly mentions your name. Maybe they dream about you after the conversation. Maybe they wake up with an emotional heaviness they can't explain. These moments can become the little sparks that keep bringing you back into their awareness. And the more they happen, the harder it becomes for them to pretend that nothing is unresolved. Listen to this, because something else may have happened during that conversation. The person close to you may have asked your soulmate what they actually want from you. Not what they miss. Not what they regret. Not what they remember. What do they want? And that question can be difficult because missing someone and being ready to build something with them are two completely different things. Your soulmate may have gone quiet when asked. They may not have had an immediate answer. Maybe they said they don't know. Maybe they said they just want to talk. Maybe they said they want to know if you're okay. But underneath those words may have been a much bigger desire. They want another chance to explain themselves. They want to tell you what was happening inside them when they walked away. They want to explain what they couldn't say at the time. They want you to understand that their silence wasn't necessarily a reflection of your value. It was a reflection of their own fear, confusion, immaturity, or inability to handle the depth of what they were feeling. And maybe they are finally mature enough to recognize that. That's why this conversation could become a turning point. The person close to you may have challenged them to stop hiding behind excuses. They may have said something simple but powerful: if you really care, then talk to them. Don't ask me what they think. Ask them. Don't guess whether they will listen. Give them the opportunity to decide. Don't keep waiting for a perfect moment. There may never be one. And those words could have followed your soulmate long after the conversation ended. Maybe they drove home thinking about them. Maybe they lay awake that night. Maybe they stared at their phone. Maybe they began writing a message. And this is where the emotional suspense grows, because the message they want to send may not be the casual, "Hey, how have you been?" that you might expect. They may want to say much more. They may want to acknowledge the distance. They may want to ask for forgiveness. They may want to tell you they still think about you. They may want to explain what changed inside them. They may want to ask whether you would be willing to meet and talk. But fear can make even the strongest emotions difficult to express. So they may type it and delete it. Type it again. Read it 10 times. Change one sentence. Remove another. Put the phone down. Pick it back up. And repeat the process. That is what emotional conflict can look like when someone has a lot to say but is terrified of what happens after they finally say it. Don't scroll, because the most important thing you need to understand is that this isn't only about what your soulmate said to someone close to you. It's about what they finally admitted to themselves. They may have been able to pretend that the connection was over when they were alone. They may have convinced themselves that enough time had passed. They may have told themselves that you had moved on and they should too. But speaking about you out loud changed something. Hearing your name in a real conversation forced the feelings out of the abstract and into reality. Suddenly, you weren't just a memory inside their head. You were a real person living a life they no longer fully knew. And that can make someone realize how much they have missed. They may have realized they don't know your daily routine anymore. They don't know what makes you laugh now. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know what your dreams are today. They don't know who has been there for you. And that distance may have hurt more than they expected. Because they didn't just miss the relationship. They missed the opportunity to know who you became. Listen to this, because there may be another layer to the conversation. The person close to you may have defended your position. They may have told your soulmate that you deserve consistency. That you deserve clarity. That you shouldn't have to decode someone's feelings. That if your soulmate truly wants to return, they need to be prepared for you to have boundaries. And your soulmate may have understood something important in that moment. You are not the same person they left behind. They cannot return expecting everything to be exactly as it was. They have to meet you where you are now. And perhaps that is what scares them most. Because if they approach you, they can't hide behind the old version of themselves anymore. They have to show you who they are today. They have to demonstrate growth rather than simply talk about it. They have to prove that their intentions are different. And they may be asking themselves whether they are truly ready for that responsibility. This is where spiritual awakening often becomes less about signs and more about personal transformation. Your soulmate may be learning that love isn't simply about destiny, chemistry, or intense emotions. Love also requires courage, communication, accountability, patience, and consistent action. Maybe that is the lesson this connection has been teaching both of you. Maybe the silence wasn't designed to punish either person. Maybe the distance created space for both of you to become more aware of what you actually need. And perhaps now your soulmate is finally seeing the difference between wanting you and being ready for you. Don't scroll, because that distinction could determine everything that happens next. They may want to reach out, but they also know that you may not accept the same behavior you once tolerated. They may miss you, but they know missing you isn't enough. They may love you, but they know love without action can still create pain. And this realization is forcing them to become more intentional. They may be thinking about what they would say if they got another chance. They may be rehearsing an apology. They may be imagining sitting across from you and finally having the conversation that should have happened a long time ago. They may even be wondering whether they should tell you about the secret meeting. And that is a fascinating possibility, because imagine them eventually saying, "I actually talked to someone close to you because I didn't know how to approach you." That admission could shock you. It could make you realize just how much thought went into their return before you ever knew anything was happening. But before that happens, there is still another piece of information your soulmate may be waiting for. They want to know whether your heart is completely closed or simply protected. They want to know whether there is any space for a conversation. They want to know whether you would hear them without immediately rejecting everything they have to say. And that may be why the person close to you became so important in this story. They may have unknowingly become the bridge between two people who were too afraid to speak directly. But bridges are temporary. Eventually, people have to cross them. And your soulmate may now be standing at the edge of that bridge, knowing that if they take another step, there is no hiding behind indirect conversations anymore. They will have to face you. They will have to face their own feelings. They will have to face the consequences of what happened before. And perhaps that is exactly what they are preparing to do. Your intuition may already be picking up on the emotional shift. You may feel restless for no obvious reason. You may suddenly think about your soulmate more frequently. You may dream about conversations or reunions. You may feel the urge to check your phone. You may notice synchronicities that make you pause. Instead of treating every sign as a guaranteed prediction, let it remind you to stay grounded and listen to what your own heart is telling you. If this person comes back, you deserve clarity. You deserve honesty. You deserve actions that match their words. And your soulmate may finally be learning that too. The secret meeting may have started because they wanted information, but it may have ended with them realizing that information isn't enough. They need courage. They need a plan. They need to stop asking other people what you might say and eventually ask you themselves. And something tells me that the person close to you may have said one final thing that your soulmate hasn't been able to stop thinking about. A sentence so simple, yet powerful enough to change the entire direction of this connection. And when you hear what that person told them about you, you may finally understand why your soulmate's energy has felt so different lately. Because that final statement may have been the moment your soulmate realized that if they keep waiting, they may lose the one person they never truly stopped caring about. Listen closely, because what happened after that conversation is something your soulmate never expected, and this is where the story begins to take a completely different turn. Your heart needs this right now, because there are moments in life when one conversation can change the way someone sees everything, and your soulmate just experienced one of those moments. They thought they were simply talking, simply asking a question, simply trying to understand something about you that had been sitting heavily on their heart, but they didn't realize that the person they chose to speak with was about to reveal something that would shake them emotionally. Don't scroll. This message is for you. Something was said in that conversation that your soulmate has been replaying over and over again, and the more they think about it, the more they realize they can no longer pretend that their feelings for you are something they can simply put away. They may have walked into that conversation trying to appear calm, confident, even detached, but underneath that surface was a completely different story. They were nervous. They were curious. They were carrying questions they didn't know how to ask you directly. And when they finally heard the answer they were looking for, something inside them shifted. Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. The person close to you didn't tell them everything, and that's important. They protected certain parts of your story. They didn't expose your private emotions. They didn't give away everything you've been feeling or everything you've been through. Instead, they gave your soulmate just enough truth to make them realize something they had been refusing to accept. You have changed. You've grown. You've become stronger. You've learned how to live without chasing anyone who isn't choosing you. And that realization hit your soulmate harder than they expected. Because somewhere inside them, they had been holding on to the belief that you would always be there, always waiting, always emotionally available, always leaving the door open no matter how long they stayed silent. But the person they spoke with made them understand that you're not standing in the same place anymore. Your energy has shifted. Your boundaries have shifted. Your heart has learned something. And now your soulmate is beginning to understand that if they want another chance with you, they cannot approach you with the same behavior that created the distance in the first place. Don't scroll, because this is where the spiritual awakening begins. The conversation didn't simply give them information about you. It forced them to look at themselves. They started remembering moments they had forgotten, little things they said, moments when they pulled away, opportunities they ignored, messages they never answered the way they should have, and feelings they tried to bury because they were afraid of what those feelings meant. Suddenly, the past didn't feel like the past anymore. It felt like a mirror. And in that mirror, they saw their own mistakes. They saw the fear that had controlled them. They saw the pride that had kept them silent. They saw the hesitation that had cost them precious time with you. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes a person doesn't realize what they had until someone else describes the impact of their absence. And that's exactly what happened. The person close to you may have said something simple, something that didn't sound dramatic at first, but it landed deeply. They may have described how you've been carrying yourself lately, how you've become more peaceful, how you're focusing on yourself, how you're no longer willing to accept confusion, mixed signals, or half-hearted effort. And your soulmate heard those words differently than anyone else would have. They heard them as a warning. Not a threat, but a realization. They suddenly understood that time is moving. Your life is moving. Your energy is moving. And if they remain frozen in fear, they may eventually lose the opportunity they once assumed would always be there. Listen to this. Your soulmate didn't leave that conversation feeling relieved. They left feeling awakened. They may have gone somewhere quiet afterward, sat in their car, walked alone, stared at their phone, or simply found themselves unable to focus on anything else. Because one sentence kept returning to their mind. What if I've already waited too long? Don't scroll. Your heart needs this. That question opened something inside them. They started wondering whether you still think about them. Whether you still care. Whether you would even answer if they reached out. Whether you've met someone else. Whether you've finally decided that your future belongs somewhere else. And the more they wondered, the stronger the emotional pressure became. This is why you may suddenly feel a strange shift around you. You may wake up thinking about them. You may notice their name somewhere unexpected. You may hear a song connected to a memory you shared. You may keep seeing repeating numbers like 111, 222, 444, or 555. And whether you view those signs spiritually or simply as meaningful reminders, they can become powerful moments of reflection. The message here isn't that every number guarantees a specific event. The message is that something inside you is asking you to pay attention to what your heart is processing. And right now, your soulmate may be processing the same connection from a completely different side. Listen closely, because this next part matters. During that conversation, your soulmate may have asked a question they never expected to ask. Something like, do they still care about me? Or, have they moved on? Or perhaps, do you think they would ever talk to me again? And the answer they received may have been more honest than they were prepared for. The person close to you may have told them that you are not waiting around for someone to make up their mind. They may have said that you're doing your own thing, building your own life, protecting your peace, and allowing whatever is meant for you to come toward you naturally. And that answer shook them. Because they suddenly realized that loving someone silently doesn't create a relationship. Thinking about someone every night doesn't repair what was broken. Missing someone doesn't replace action. And that realization is exactly where their awakening becomes real. Don't scroll. This message is for you. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that if they want to return to your life, they have to show up differently. They have to communicate differently. They have to be honest. They have to take responsibility for what happened instead of hiding behind circumstances, timing, fear, or pride. And that may be why the conversation happened when it did. Sometimes the universe doesn't need to send a dramatic sign. Sometimes it simply places the right person in the right room and allows one honest conversation to reveal what someone has been avoiding for months or even years. Your soulmate may have thought they were secretly gathering information about you, but in reality, they were being confronted with the truth about themselves. Your absence has been teaching them. Your silence has been teaching them. Your growth has been teaching them. And now they're finally listening. Your heart needs this right now, because there is something else you need to understand. The person they met may have noticed something about your soulmate that even your soulmate hasn't fully admitted. They may have noticed the way their expression changed when your name came up. They may have noticed how quickly they became emotional. They may have noticed how they tried to act casual but couldn't hide their reaction. They may have seen the hesitation, the nervousness, the longing. And that person may have realized before your soulmate did that the feelings are still there. Sometimes the people around us can see what we're trying to hide from ourselves. And your soulmate may have been exposed in that moment. Not in a humiliating way, but emotionally. The mask slipped. The walls came down. And suddenly the person across from them could see exactly how much you still matter. Don't scroll, because this is where the conversation becomes even more important. Your soulmate may have admitted something they have never said out loud before. Maybe they admitted they regret how things ended. Maybe they said they still think about you. Maybe they confessed that they have tried to move on but something always brings their thoughts back to you. Maybe they said they don't know if they deserve another chance. Or maybe they simply sat there in silence when your name came up because words weren't enough to explain what they were feeling. Whatever the exact words were, the emotional truth underneath them was the same. You still matter. And that realization is creating pressure inside them. Not pressure from the universe to force an outcome, but the natural pressure that comes when someone's actions no longer match what their heart knows. They can keep pretending they don't care, but they have to live with the truth inside themselves. They can keep avoiding the conversation with you, but they can't avoid the conversation happening inside their own mind. Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. There is also a possibility that the person close to you told your soulmate something about your strength that they never knew. They may have said you've been through a lot emotionally, but you're not the same person anymore. They may have described how you've stopped looking for validation. How you're learning to choose peace. How you've become more selective about who gets access to your heart. And your soulmate may have felt a mixture of admiration and fear. Admiration because they're proud of the person you're becoming. Fear because they realize that the version of you who once waited for them may not exist anymore. And that realization can awaken someone faster than any romantic fantasy ever could. Suddenly, the question isn't, will they always love me? The question becomes, have I become someone worthy of being trusted with their heart again? Don't scroll. This message is for you. That is a powerful shift. Because before this conversation, your soulmate may have been focused on whether you still wanted them. After the conversation, they may have started asking whether they are ready to give you what you actually deserve. That's growth. That's awakening. That's the beginning of emotional responsibility. And if you've been wondering why their energy feels different, why your intuition feels louder, why memories seem to be resurfacing, this may be why. Something has changed in the way they are processing the connection. They're not simply remembering the good times anymore. They're remembering the lessons. They're seeing the consequences of their choices. They're recognizing the emotional weight of silence. And they're realizing that if they ever speak to you again, they cannot come with empty words. They have to come with truth. Listen closely. There may also have been one specific detail mentioned during that conversation that completely caught your soulmate off guard. Something about your current life. Something about how you've been feeling. Something about a decision you've made. Something that showed them you're moving forward. And when they heard it, their heart may have dropped. Because suddenly the possibility of losing you became real. Not theoretical. Not something they could postpone. Real. They may have realized that while they were taking their time, life continued moving around you. New opportunities came. New people may have entered your world. Your priorities changed. Your confidence grew. Your identity expanded beyond the relationship you once had with them. And now they understand that your future isn't waiting for their permission. Don't scroll. Your heart needs this right now. That realization may be the very thing that pushes them toward action. Not because they want to control you. Not because they're entitled to your attention. But because they finally understand that if they want to be part of your future, they have to make a genuine effort in the present. They have to speak. They have to apologize if an apology is needed. They have to explain what happened. They have to tell the truth. And perhaps most importantly, they have to accept that you get to decide what happens next. That's the mature form of love your soulmate may finally be learning. Love isn't possession. Love isn't pressure. Love isn't assuming someone will wait forever. Love is honesty, responsibility, consistency, and choice. And that lesson may have been the hidden purpose behind this secret meeting. Your soulmate thought they were looking for answers about you. Instead, they received answers about themselves. Listen to this. Something else happened after they left. They may have checked your social media. They may have looked at an old picture. They may have opened an old conversation. They may have searched your name and then stopped themselves from reaching out. Maybe they typed something and deleted it. Maybe they wrote a message but didn't know how to begin. Maybe they stared at your contact for several minutes wondering whether you would respond. And if you've been feeling that strange urge to check your phone lately, don't immediately assume it means something supernatural. Let it simply remind you that your emotions are active and that this situation still matters to you. Stay grounded. Stay calm. Stay connected to yourself. Your heart needs this right now. Because the most important part of this message isn't whether your soulmate sends a message tonight or tomorrow. The most important part is what you do if they do. Are you ready to hear the truth without abandoning your own boundaries? Are you ready to listen without immediately forgetting what happened? Are you ready to let actions speak louder than promises? Because the universe may be preparing you not just for a reunion, but for a moment of discernment. A moment where you finally see whether this person has truly changed or whether they simply missed the comfort of what you once gave them. Don't scroll. Listen to this carefully. If they come back, let consistency prove the words. Let effort prove the intention. Let time reveal whether the awakening is real. You don't have to rush. You don't have to chase. You don't have to convince them. And you certainly don't have to accept less than what your heart knows it deserves. The conversation they had may have opened a door, but you are still the one who decides whether that door stays open. And that is the part your soulmate may now be realizing too. They don't control the outcome anymore. You do not control the outcome either. The future will be shaped by what both of you choose next. But something has changed. The silence has been disturbed. The truth has been spoken somewhere. Your name has been brought into a conversation you didn't even know was happening. And now your soulmate is carrying those words with them. They're thinking. They're remembering. They're questioning. They're awakening. And perhaps most importantly, they're preparing themselves to confront something they've avoided for far too long. Don't scroll, because the next chapter is where this becomes personal. There is a sentence your soulmate may have heard during that conversation that they cannot get out of their mind. A sentence that made them realize they may have misunderstood your silence completely. They may have thought you stopped caring. They may have assumed you had moved on because you didn't reach out. But what if your silence wasn't proof that you stopped loving them? What if it was proof that you finally started loving yourself enough to stop chasing clarity from someone who wasn't ready to give it? That possibility can change everything. And your soulmate may finally be understanding it. Your silence wasn't necessarily rejection. It may have been protection. Protection of your peace. Protection of your dignity. Protection of your healing. And when they realized that, something inside them softened. They may have felt regret, but they may also have felt respect. Because now they see that the person they once knew has become someone who knows their own worth. Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. Your soulmate may be closer to an emotional breakthrough than you realize, but don't confuse a breakthrough with a guarantee. A spiritual message can inspire hope, but real relationships are built through real choices. If they return, let them return with honesty. If they speak, listen for accountability. If they apologize, look for changed behavior. If they say they love you, allow time to show whether their love has matured. You don't need to force destiny. You don't need to chase signs. You don't need to make something happen. Your job is to stay grounded enough to recognize what is healthy when it arrives. And perhaps that is the deepest message hidden inside this entire situation. Your soulmate's secret meeting wasn't just about them learning something about you. It was about them finally learning something about love. They learned that silence has consequences. They learned that people don't remain frozen in time. They learned that someone can love you and still choose themselves. They learned that missing someone isn't enough. They learned that if you truly value someone, eventually you have to be brave enough to tell the truth. And now they are standing at the edge of that truth. Don't scroll. Stay with me, because the next part may be the reason this message found you now. There is something your soulmate hasn't said yet, something they may be rehearsing in their mind, something that began forming the moment they walked away from that conversation. And when they finally say it, you may understand why they had to talk to someone close to you first. They weren't ready to come directly to you because they were afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of your reaction. Afraid that too much time had passed. Afraid that you no longer felt the same. But now they know one thing for certain. If they continue waiting for the perfect moment, the moment may never come. And that realization is beginning to change their behavior. The universe may be moving them from observation into action, from fear into courage, from silence into communication. And that is where the next chapter begins. Your soulmate has heard something about you that they can no longer forget. They have seen a version of your life from the outside, and now they're wondering whether there is still a place for them in it. They're not simply wondering whether you love them. They're wondering whether they have earned the right to be close to you again. And that question, more than anything else, may be the beginning of their transformation. So breathe. Stay grounded. Don't chase. Don't panic. Don't force the universe to prove anything to you. Let what is real reveal itself through actions. Because the conversation has already happened. The seed has already been planted. The realization has already begun. And somewhere tonight, your soulmate may be sitting quietly with one thought repeating in their mind, I need to tell them the truth. Don't scroll. Your heart needs this right now. Because what they say next may finally reveal what that secret conversation was really about, why they chose someone close to you instead of coming directly to you, and what they are preparing to do now that they know you are no longer the same person they left behind. The silence isn't as silent as it used to be. Something has shifted. Something has opened. And the next move may be closer than either of you realizes.